Right, sermon bingo begins now. Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way, where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries aloud. In Proverbs 8, as we've heard, and also in Proverbs 1, the attribute of God's wisdom is personified as a woman crying out where the paths meet, the crossroads, beside the city gate, in the town square, from the city walls. And in ancient times, these were places where community life happened. They were the common everyday places, places of business and politics, places of disputes too, as people get together, sometimes disputes happen, places where trades and bets were made, places where illegal and immoral behaviour can occur, and places where people from diverse backgrounds mingle and meet. And as I think about those images, I imagine another place where peoples met, paths were joined together, people's lives intersected. I picture Whanganui in the early days. It was a place where people from Upper and Lower Hapu were thrown together, not always with mutually beneficial and peaceful interests. And intersecting these already crossed paths, there came Pākehā settlers from 1840 onwards. And they were not necessarily the best of people. 2 grog shops were established early in 1841. And even Mr. Edward Jerningham Wakefield, who always had a strong liking for Whanganui, referred to Whanganui as this refuge of lawlessness. And the Wellington paper of the time states that drunkenness and debauchery were rife in Whanganui. And of course, there were also honest people trying their best, trying to do their best, but many of them having been duped by the New Zealand company's advertisements of the wonderful paradise prospective settlers would find in New Zealand. And at this crossroads that was Whanganui in the early years, we have all these different people thrown together. Where the paths meet, wisdom takes her stand. Beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries aloud. And to whom does wisdom call? To everyone, but especially to the simple, the gullible, the foolish. And if we search Proverbs more widely, we find that these labels, simple, gullible, foolish, were attached to people and behaviours we would not regard as good and worthy. These are the people that wisdom cries out to, actively pursues, raises her voice, sets an enticing banquet for the foolish, the gullible, the simple. God, in his love as wisdom, cries out to and pursues the unwise, the foolish, the simple, gullible people we are in the ordinary places of life. And I picture God crying out to the unwise, foolish, gullible, simple people of early Whanganui. And it's not the case that wisdom cries out, as it were, at a distance. You know, we don't have wisdom. It's not as if wisdom is remote and uninterested, the sort of dispassionate observer, uninvolved, nor is wisdom taking her stand from a position representing privilege or moral superiority. Wisdom calls out at the crossroads, beside the gate, in the public square, and so on. God is present right in the midst of the hurly-burly, the disorder of these places where people gather, making his plea to them. God gets his hands dirty. In 1 Corinthians 3, Paul talks of what I think of as another crossroads, the temple. The temple in Jerusalem, in particular on top of the Ark, the top of the Ark of the Covenant, deep within the Holy of Holies, was the meeting place between God and humankind. As he worked to understand the significance of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, Paul came to conclude that Jesus himself performed the function of the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. Jesus was the place of meeting and reconciliation between God and humankind. Within Paul's Judaism, that was an extraordinary claim. But here, Paul goes further, saying emphatically, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit lives among you? God's temple is sacred and you together are that temple." You together are God's temple. Paul's point is that built on this foundation of the risen King, Messiah Jesus, it is now the Christian community that has become the place where God and humankind meet. It is in our life together, this crossroads of our intersecting lives, this meeting place, that God and humankind meet. So, for example, at the beginning of our communion prayer, the Great Thanksgiving, we say, "The Lord is here. God's Spirit is with us." And again, we might say, in this, God gets his hands dirty in his being among us, because we know that really we are not worthy vessels of God. Our gospel reading today is a very well-known portion of Matthew's gospel, beginning with a set of declarations often referred to as the Beatitudes. In the film The Life of Brian, as Jesus makes these declarations, some near the back of the crowd are having difficulty hearing what he's saying, and a man helpfully suggests to those behind him, "I think it was, 'Blessed are the cheesemakers.'" Mrs. Gregory responds, "Well, what's so special about cheesemakers?" Gregory responds, "Well, obviously it's not meant to be taken literally. It refers to any manufacturer of dairy products." And while the film is a parody, I think there's an important truth implied here. Blessed are the cheesemakers, for they shall be called children of God. G.K. Chesterton expressed the same truth when he wrote, "The most extraordinary thing in the world is an ordinary man and an ordinary woman and their ordinary children." You see, our worth, our value, does not come from anything we have done. It does not come from our status in worldly terms. It does not come from privilege of birth or economic situation or our job or wealth or power or fame or from our achievements or from our work. It comes from the grace of God in Jesus Christ, in which we are adopted into the family of God, children of the Most High God. The starting point is our acceptance of that gift and our holding fast to Jesus. The people who brought the word of God, the wisdom of God, into the crossroads that was early Whanganui were not terribly famous people. Yesterday, we buried Alison Sheedy. In the mid-70s, her father, J.B. Bennett, wrote a history of this parish. And in this, he records that, strange as it seems, not the Pākehā, but the Māori were the first to introduce Christianity to Whanganui. For about 1836, two chiefs from the Ngāti Ruanui tribe of South Taranaki, recently converted to Christianity, arrived to spread the gospel among their kinsfolk. The purpose of their visit being misunderstood, they were promptly killed. Later, another party from the same tribe came for a like purpose, but were treated in the same manner. Nothing daunted, in 1838, a party of Christian Māori from the Lake Taupo district arrived under their chief, Weramu Te Tauri, and successfully preached the Christian faith. A carved archway leading from the porch to the entrance of Pūtiki Church commemorates this historic event. Well, while Te Tauri has a commemorative day in the calendar of the church, May 17th, just in case you were wondering, we know nothing about his early life and the circumstances of his hearing the gospel and his adoption of Christianity. Into this crossroads, through these ordinary people, came the gospel of Christ. Into the crossroads of early Whanganui came an English missionary Can you guess who? I hear Richard Taylor. No, not Richard Taylor. No, not Richard Taylor. First came the Reverend John Mason, CMS missionary, who came to Whanganui in June 1840, accompanied by his wife, who was not named in Bennett's book, custom of the time, of course, and also accompanied by Mr. Richard Matthews, a lay catechist, a teacher of the gospel. And Mason drowned in the Turakina River in January 1843. Now, Richard Taylor is memorialised in various ways. The central stained glass window here installed in his honour, the name given to the parish office building. But Mason and Matthews go unlauded. Those first Māori and Pākehā missionaries, we know little about these people. In all likelihood, they were quite ordinary people, made extraordinary only by their willingness to follow Jesus' call. Blessed are the cheesemakers. Today we celebrate a festival called the Builders of the Anglican Church of Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia. It is acknowledged because a need was recognised by the compilers of the calendar of the church in this land. They write, a number of significant people in the history of the Anglican Church in Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia are remembered individually in the calendar. But the growth of the church in the South Pacific owes a great deal as well to many, many others who by their faithful service and enthusiastic support have shaped the church that we have inherited. In the preface to his book, J.B. Bennett explains why he has routinely omitted names of many of the people who had been mentioned in his source documents, such as vestry minutes. His concern was one of fairness, because he notes that in addition to the people who do get singled out for mention in such documents, in all churches there is a band of faithful souls known only to the Lord for whom they have worked, who in season and out of season gave loyal and consistent service to keep the church functioning, but who, because they do not come under the public notice, are granted no special thanks. Their name is Legion. Blessed are the cheesemakers. Where the paths meet, where wisdom takes her stand, beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries aloud. Whanganui today is a crossroads, a meeting place of diverse, intersecting lives. And right in the midst of this, in all the messiness of the crossroads, the wisdom of God takes her stand and cries out. In this crossroads, in all its confusion of lives, with all that is wrong with these lives, we are to be the place where God and humankind meet. We don't have to be extraordinary people to do this. Blessed are the cheesemakers, and blessed too are the school teachers, the labourers, the business people, the farmers, the homemakers, the children, the students, the retirees. Blessed are all the plain, ordinary people who are made extraordinary by trying to faithfully follow Jesus. Blessed are all you ordinary people, faithfully following Jesus while opening your lives, especially our life together, opening up your lives to the messiness of those we are thrown together with in this city in which the wisdom of God takes her stand. There was a word called out at a crucial point. Thank you to all the participants in bingo. Well done. But I think we should acknowledge it together. The word was us. Blessed are the cheesemakers. Us! One more time. Blessed are the cheesemakers. Us! And if you've failed to complete your bingo card, come and see me afterwards.